Good morning and welcome to the Morning Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ham, coming to you as always from the Spotlight Studios here in Morristown, New Jersey. My guest today is a business development executive for BuildPro Construction Services and Captiva Development. She's passionate about giving back, supporting mental health awareness and community building. Like me, she's born and raised right here in the great state of New Jersey, and this is her third time on the show. She is Nicole Cruz. Nicole, welcome.
Hi, how are you, Mike? I'm excited to be on.
I'm excited to have you back. So, okay, first question right out of the gate. What's the vibe like? Because you came on the first iteration of the show, and now you've come on the new show. So how does it feel? Like, what are you feeling as we kind of progress through this episode right out of the gate?
I feel super stoked. I sound like a hippie saying that. I feel super stoked. I think that there's been so much growth watching your podcast grow, watching your business grow, seeing how many different interviews you've been doing. So I feel honored that you asked me to be on again. So I'm definitely in a great, mood. I feel like there's such good energy, and I think it'll be great to have a super, casual conversation about business and life and see where both of us are at.
Right. No, yeah, me too. Because like I said before, everybody that listens to this show pretty much knows what the first show was and how it was very scripted and everything. And then the last time you were on, where we had the panel with you, Trevor, Dan, and Brent, and that just, we were talking about, I don't even like trends in the real estate industry, I think. So really at no point have I ever gotten to actually know you. So this just seems pretty good to get you back on and actually have like a real conversation. And 3 times on the show, there's a limited amount of people that get to that level. So I'm not going to say it, but I feel like this will be one of those things that you look back on in your career and be like, wow, that's when I made it, when I did my 3rd spot on the Morning Spotlight. So
yes, it was Mike. Thanks, Mike.
It's catapult. So funny. Yeah, go ahead.
It's so funny talking about the last podcast. I was just telling someone the other day that, we're looking at different trends. I was in a meeting with an architect, and they were talking about, the bigger amenity spaces, the decks in apartment buildings. And we literally had just had that conversation when the pandemic had just hit. When you had asked us questions about where we saw the multifamily space going, I was like, I predicted this a year ago.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. And that's, I think like maybe we could even start talking about maybe BuildPro, Captiva, and then we'll do that stuff first, and then we'll kind of get more into you, just so that people know, because this is a real estate generally focused podcast. So we'll do that stuff, then we'll get to know you better. So tell me, BuildPro, Captiva, give me the short and sweet version of what that is.
Absolutely. So BuildPro Construction Services and Captiva Development are sister companies, both owned by the man, the myth, the legend, Richard Osika, which is my boss. I report directly to him. So it is a full service real estate development and construction company. We specialize in multifamily, mixed use, and commercial ground up construction. We work with investors and developers, mainly investors and developers, to work on their projects. We work with a lot of, real estate lawyers, attorneys, architects, engineers, because a part of that industry is design build projects. So I love design build projects because we really are able to build a good relationship with those clients from start to finish, which is basically a turnkey process where we get involved from land acquisition through entitlements, and then value engineering construction documents, and then working with you with going vertical in your construction process. So that's really what we specialize in. We do a lot as a company.
Right.
I specifically work with our pre-construction side of the business. So I'm working with investors and developers who, are looking to purchase new land. We have a bunch of off-market opportunities, specifically in New Jersey, Texas market. We're growing there, and other markets as well, where we'll present them to our clients contingent on us being the GC, and we'll build that relationship. On the Captiva end, we do develop for ourselves. We currently don't have any existing assets that we've developed because Captiva is only about 2 years old. So she's still new. I would like to say 2 to 5 years old. And we're working through entitlements on some of those projects where we were named redeveloper. And so that process, as you know, takes quite some time.
Right.
So Captiva is more of our long-term girlfriend, and BuildPro Construction Services is the supportive girlfriend
Right.
that really supports that relationship in order for Captiva to grow.
Yeah.
So you need both in
Right.
order to work together.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. So, is it, I think it's a lot of multifamily, right? You guys do a lot of multifamily projects?
Yeah, so in New Jersey, we do a lot of multifamily projects. We have a sector where we do interior fit outs and build to suits, but we find that we can't be as competitive as some of the smaller mom and pop GCs who don't have as much overhead as us. And we're very frank with our clients because I think transparency is super important as a GC. We can easily make a quick buck or two, working on those smaller projects, but we want a long-term relationship. We don't want a one-time transactional relationship, and then you come to us and you realize you could have gotten it cheaper.
Right.
A 2,000 square foot interior job, and now that ruined our relationship. So we did a lot of office interior stuff, but as we've grown, we've really focused on that multifamily ground up. In Texas, we started off with a lot of commercial, and we're getting into that multifamily space in a little bit of a different method than a lot of other companies do. What we did was we really created relationships with landowners in Texas. And, we cut out the broker fees, we cut out the commissions, and we act as an owner's rep. We'll take their site, we'll work with an architect and engineer and create feasibility studies and look to see what we can build there. And then we'll present it to investors and developers as in, hey, we have this amazing off-market opportunity. We're exclusive to it. And we have the GC status. We have our office in Houston, Texas. Let's work together.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was pretty cool, like as I was doing, my hours worth of research pre-episode, was I was going through your Instagram profile. I think it was on Instagram or it was on LinkedIn. I forget. Well, and we're going to talk about social media at some point. The projects in Detroit where you're taking those old multifamilies and like kind of renovating them, like they're historic, but they're basically dilapidated. I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
Thanks. That's a new project that we're working on. Those projects get a little bit complicated for the developers and owners because now you have to be super specific as to what you can touch and can't touch because a lot of it's historic. But the post-construction result is always so amazing because it has some history component to it. So that's going to be a great conversion. I'm excited. And as soon as we posted that, a bunch of people asked me if I had off-market opportunities in Detroit. A lot of people want to invest there. I have a few clients who are investing there as well, but I definitely see Detroit being an area where a lot of people want to start looking into.
Yeah. And how long have you been at BuildPro and Captiva?
Almost 2 years now.
Almost 2 years. And were you doing something before that, or was that your first job after you graduated?
No, so I was working for a real estate consultant company.
Okay.
So I was working with mainly developers, construction companies, engineers, and getting them into the markets that they really wanted to get into.
Yeah. All right. So question about that is that construction, at least I'm not in construction, nor do I know a ton of people in construction outside of you and a few others. But I would think that it's a very male dominated industry. So being relatively new, so like only a couple of years in, and in this type of industry, what's that experience been like for you to get acclimated and show that you can present some value to the people that you're trying to sell to?
That's such a good question, Mike. I think I love the challenge. I think besides it being a male-dominated industry, I think the real estate development industry as a whole has a huge age gap in it. So I really get excited going into meetings, quite frankly, with men who aren't used to seeing a woman in construction, because the first thing I always get is, I've never seen women in construction, or I've never heard of a woman for a construction company. And I'm not a feminist by any means. I believe in, women taking important roles, and I do think that, I don't find the problem with it being a male dominated industry. It does pose different challenges when you have to really prove yourself, but I think that's in every industry in general. I think it's important that you work hard in educating yourself, in client knowledge, in market knowledge, in the industry knowledge, because at the end of the day, there's a bunch of different people who do what you do. It's one, your personality and who they want to work with. Two, how much you know and what type of value you can add. So I spent a lot of time with Rich asking him a million questions, and I still do today. Knowledge is so important. Education's important. I'm always reading up on the market. I'm always, asking myself questions. I went to Monmouth University and I studied in finance and real estate, and all of my professors were adjunct professors. So we were really able to use, their knowledge to understand, the industry. But on top of that, I worked throughout college. So my first job going into college was for a real estate development company, and I worked on the South Beach at Long Branch project, which is, higher end condos. And then after that, a real estate consulting company. Before that, Bank of America. So I've had a lot of everyday experience. I would work full time and then I'd take nighttime classes.
Right.
So it just became a matter of, I personally think there's only so much you can learn from a book.
Oh,
it really, it takes experiential knowledge, which is why I think when people come out of college, they don't think they have experience. So I always say, make sure you're working in that industry you want to be in during college, because now you have 4 years under your belt. You're young and you still have a lifetime to go in this industry. I don't have time to, ruin my reputation. These are like pivotal years in my life. So I would say I love the challenge. It poses different challenges other than, knowledge and experience, which you're always going to have no matter what industry. But then also, when you're working in real estate development, you do face a lot of different cultures. You're working with investors from different places, and some of them have different religious or cultural beliefs where they can't necessarily be in a room alone with me, or they can't shake my hand, or, they can't do certain things and they rather speak with a man. So that was something new to me that I had never experienced, and I had to learn and understand and not take it so personal, because to me it was like, what's the big deal? But it also gave me a lot of cultural appreciation where I realized, how important these things were to different cultures and people. So Rich and I work really closely depending on our client and their beliefs so that everyone feels comfortable, because the reality is some people feel more comfortable working with a man. You're creating a relationship with me where you're speaking to me, almost every day through your projects. We become a pivotal role in each other's lives to make sure your project, which is like your baby, can come to life. So I think comfortability with our clients is super important. And with that comes a lot of respect. So I think as a woman, you need to be able to present yourself with respect, with integrity, and also understand and adapt to your environment, because every environment's different.
Yeah.
So it can get very sticky depending on what environment you're in. So it's really understanding how to adapt to those different environments.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said the age gap thing in part of that answer, because that's one of the things that I've noticed from a title insurance sales side is that, especially when I'm trying to market to, let's say, real estate attorneys, there is that big age gap right in the middle. So you have people that are, 65 plus, and then you have people that are, my age, like I'm 30. So somewhere in that range, you know what I mean? And then there's nobody in the middle. And I don't know if this also adds into what you were saying, but like when I first started, so I've been doing this 4 years in August. And when I first started, even, at the last couple of years, I get a lot of the you're young, which like drives me crazy because even though I may be young, I mean, I can still do the same job that anybody else you're going to go to can. Right. So I think that's, different from the gender side, but also just like the, it's like a respect thing. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's, if you can prove to them pretty early on that you can do the job, then they feel comfortable using you. But I feel like there's always that rub between you and even, maybe attorneys that are in their 40s still sometimes look at me as somebody that's super young. And I'm like, I'm not that much younger than you. You know what I mean? So
no, I face that all the time. People ask me my age, and I'm always so hesitant to answer. And I hate talking about age because why are you asking? What are your intentions to ask, right? Like when you ask someone their age, unless you're trying to get to know them on a personal level, when you're asking that in a business environment, I think it plays no relevance. I think it doesn't provide any value because there's people who are 65 plus and someone who's younger than them may have more knowledge and vice versa.
Right.
So when it comes to that, I get it. And I think working for an employer that embraces that is very important, because if Rich threw my age and my experience in my face all the time, he wouldn't trust me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Dealing with clients. So I think it comes down to your experience and then that value. And it takes time to show your value. And that's why I had utilized social media so much in different ways. And even utilizing social media, people didn't like the way I was utilizing it, the older generation, or they didn't understand it. And age also comes to play. I had an employer once who always brought up age. It was like, I've been in this industry for 30 plus years. You know nothing. You are nothing. And you're never going to be at my level because you're younger than me.
Right.
And
sounds like a very inspiring leader.
Yeah, but I guess for any person who's, an older individual or business owner listening to this, that's not very encouraging to tell your employees that they'll never be as good as you because they're younger. And then also you have that older age gap where they don't want to teach the younger generation what they know.
Yeah.
And I always find that so interesting, because if you're so well versed and knowledge in what you know and you know what value you provide, why do you fear teaching the younger generation?
Yeah. Right.
Clearly, you're scared that they're going to be able to learn quicker than you and may take your role. But at the end of the day, me as an employee, me as a business owner now, me as an individual, I want someone who knows more than me around me, because if you choose me, that means clearly I have value to provide that, someone else didn't see.
Right.
So.
And I think it's just one of those other things too. Like I've spent a lot of time, I knew kind of early on, I was attracted to a couple different sales reps here at my company who are just older, have been doing it for a long time, because I knew that they would give me good advice. Like a couple of them are in their 70s. One guy's, I think he's like, maybe late 50s, early 60s. So, 3 people that have been in the game for a very long time. But also they recognize the fact that, selling title insurance, selling construction services in 1991, let's say, is a lot different than selling it in 2021. And there are some things that are, they stand the test of time, like sales ethics, I guess, and how you approach people and the trust factor and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I do a podcast to help me generate business. That's something that like they never thought to do, because it wasn't even on their radar, because it's relatively new podcasting. Social media is another thing, which we'll get into in a minute. But I think that that's a really good point, because I can take those, experience, life lessons, things that they've been through, because there is no, better teacher than that, I think, than the actual experience, actually experience things. But then you add on stuff that, kind of you and I grew up with. You add in social media, you add in stuff like this, you add in just like different ways to try to connect to people. And next thing you know, you just have, you're rocking it, because you have all these different avenues. And especially over the last year, where you couldn't really do in-person meetings, it happened, maybe in the summer, early fall, and then it got cold again and nobody wanted to do indoor dining, and now we're doing it again. But but that was like a big thing. And like I said, we're going to get to social media here in a minute, but I just think it's really important to recognize the fact that because we're so adept at doing that kind of stuff and putting stuff out there to maintain those, like people remember who you are. my biggest fear, and I'm sure it's the same thing for you, is when we came out of this COVID pandemic, year plus that we've been in, to go to an in-person event and be like, oh my God, Mike, I did not know you sold title insurance anymore. And I'd be like, oh my God, like that's like the worst thing anybody could ever say,
That's so funny. I just went to my first in-person event in New York, and I was posting about it all throughout social media, and it was amazing. It was so nice to just be around people. And I said I was so excited. I was inviting everyone in the industry, and people like, why are you so excited? This is my first networking event in over a year. No one would have ever thought this pandemic would have lasted so long. And pre-pandemic, it's all I did. Network, lunches, events. I was planning to host my own event. And it was just so nice. I think humans need other human interaction. And I'm so tired of the phone interaction, texting interaction. I need to see you. I need to say hi. I want to see you smile, laugh. It's so different. So it was definitely really nice. And utilizing social media could be a good and bad thing. Right. But if you do it right, it can definitely really add value to your company.
Okay. Let's start with the bad things, because I'm interested to see what you think are the bad things about social media. Because there are, I agree, but I'm just interested because you're my guest, so you go first.
Being the woman that I am, I think, I have to think about that. No, I'm a woman. I think that being a young female who puts themselves out on social media, let's keep it to LinkedIn, right? You, in a business environment that is male predominant and also has mainly older individuals who say they know how to use social media but are still figuring it out, but also are stuck in another time year frame of respect and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, can find creativity to be inappropriate. And what do I mean by that? I started selling the deals that we had, creating quick videos in my living room. And I remember getting comments all the time of, women in the industry or men saying, it's inappropriate that you're sitting in your living room making a video and then posting it to a business page. And then from that went, oh, God forbid my shirt was too low or my shoulder was showing, or, if I had makeup, this isn't a beauty pageant. God forbid a woman dressed up for a video, or if I posted, just a picture of myself and, content included on that picture that meant I was trying to attract men, the amount of negativity that you got is draining.
Yeah.
I'm like, geez, you're taking this a little far. That was not where I was going. And then you have the other spectrum of those negative people turning into now, people thinking that me posting means I'm looking for a dating application in my DM or my comments. If I was looking to date, I'd be on a dating app,
Right.
So I guess that's what comes with the territory. But it's different when you see that happening to famous people and you never think it would happen to you. And now you're posting on LinkedIn and you're getting the hate comments, you're getting, inappropriate messages, you're getting, people threatening you via messaging, losing clients because they don't think something's appropriate. And now, I think this brought me and my company so much closer together because BuildPro wasn't big on LinkedIn before, I really wanted to be on there. We were big on it and we have our marketing team, and it was more strategic marketing where we were creating flyers and, it was very cutthroat. This is a deal. Here's a flyer, that. And then I had presented to Rich, I want to build a different platform on LinkedIn where I want to be more personal, and maybe not everyone likes that. And maybe not everyone, thinks that's the best way of marketing, but I think that I was tired of talking to robots. Yeah. I was tired of talking to super salesy people who weren't real. I didn't know their story. I didn't know who they were. And if I met them in person, I went to lunch with them, then I did. But we're in the pandemic and we can't do that. And if people can get a little bit personality from me on a LinkedIn post and it's not so salesy, I found that people could connect to that and then they wanted to speak to you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the negative things that I experienced from LinkedIn. And it came to a point, and I still do it today. I'll take LinkedIn breaks. I went like 5 months off of LinkedIn, and it hurt my business because people were trying to contact me, but I just couldn't look.
Yeah.
I just couldn't look at it. It became a mental health thing where it became toxic. And I had to sit down with Rich and tell him, I don't know how to manage this because it's so overwhelming and time consuming, and it could distract from my actual business because not everything is business or leads that we can, make money from. Some of it's just relationship building, but it's relationship building on such a higher scale that people hire people just to do this.
Yeah.
And
right.
I could easily have an assistant that's doing it, but then it's not me anymore.
Right. It takes the personal side right out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's time management. It's figuring out how to mentally manage it and it not, mentally affect me, the negativity, because people hide behind their phones and write negative comments and don't realize that there's a human on the other side of the screen.
Yeah.
Writing, you're just looking for attention. Look at all these men, this, that, all the negative things I won't say live on air, but you're reading that and you're like, dude, I was just posting a post. Like,
yeah, right.
Nothing to do with that. So that's a reflection of someone's own self. But I say to the women who are new, and I think what helped me was there were so many women who reached out to me telling me like that my LinkedIn was an inspiration to them and how they didn't have the guts to post themselves like that on LinkedIn because they were scared of the negative feedback they were going to have and how their colleagues, peers, and boss may look at them. And I'm like, listen, me and Rich have such a great business relationship where, if a guy's super inappropriate with me on LinkedIn and I block him, I've had, men then contact our company and say that I'm not answering their business inquiries. And then Rich will come to me and be like, Nicole, why didn't you follow up? And I'll be like, this is why I didn't. Yeah. I don't want to work with someone like this. And that's why. And not many people have that relationship with their boss, but I think it's trust, right? He just trusts that I'm going to do the right thing.
Right. And I think to me, and, like I haven't gotten any of those comments, but I think to me, building the personal brand is super important. And that's why, like I've said this on the show a million times, I always felt, I didn't realize, but I had business Mike, title insurance salesman Mike. I had, friend Mike, relationship Mike, family Mike that sits on the couch and watches Netflix in his shorts and t-shirt. And then, eventually at some point last year, doing that first iteration of the show, like I just didn't feel like myself. And then the more I just kind of embraced this and who I am and how I operate and the way I think and the way I talk and everything, that was where I saw, maybe I don't connect well with everybody now, but I connect stronger with the people that connect with that message and the way that I'm presenting myself. And I think that that's something that I think, what you're saying is that the more specific you make yourself and the more true to who you are as an actual person, especially on social media where, people's BS meters are so finely tuned that they can just, tell like this person's not real. This person's real. This person, they know. And I think that that's one of the things, like the more specific you are and the more you're able to actually embrace that, you're going to connect stronger with the people that embrace what you're doing, and then you're going to lose people because they're not going to really understand, like, why don't you wear like a suit when you host a podcast? You're a title salesman. It's a very like old school industry, or why are you even doing a podcast, or why do you post on Instagram or, post about your, you have like a Nashville based singer on your podcast. Why is that on LinkedIn? Stuff like that, where it's just, I totally agree with everything that you just said. And I think it's just one of those things where like the more you're able to embrace that, but I did find it interesting. I was going to ask you about it, but you just talked about it anyway. Like if that's tough to deal with. And then, like you said, you have to take like a 5-month break.
Yeah. And I try not to take so long because there are positives from LinkedIn. And I think one of my most amazing messages was when I got contacted by this girl, and she really wanted to connect with me and have me mentor her on social media. And her uncle is actually in the industry and sent her my page.
Oh,
so
really?
it was a man who sent her niece my page and said, I want you to contact her, see if she could mentor you. So seeing that like dynamic of a man seeing my page and then showing his niece to look up to me, I was like, okay, maybe I'm doing something right, because there's times when you get so much negative, feedback, and you're like, wait, do I look inappropriate? Is what I'm doing inappropriate? Am I going to lose clients because of this? You're constantly walking on eggshells, I feel like, as a woman in the industry, because, God forbid your shoulders showing, then you're sending off this message, that message. And do I think there's a level of, respect and level of appropriateness? Yes. But do I think that people push it way too far? Yes. I also think that majority of our life is spent working. And I'm gonna put this picture to you. I'm really big on self-growth. And if majority of your time is spent working, and when you come home, you're a completely different person trying to express yourself, how do you really know what your identity is when you're one person 90% of your life, 90% of your day at work with business people, at networking events? And then when you come home and you're with your spouse, or you're by yourself, you finally feel relieved because you could be yourself. How does that take a toll on your mental health? If someone's going to tell me it doesn't, they're lying.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It's exhausting. You feel like you can't identify with your career, which is another huge issue, because if you don't love what you're doing, you're going to be miserable. And you feel like you can't connect with people because they don't truly know who you are.
Right.
And that's a huge issue. And I don't want to spend my life living that way. And I think it's important to have a culture in your work environment where you're able to embrace your own natural talents. You're able to embrace you being a mother, for example. During COVID, some of our mothers in our office had to bring their kids to work. And, you have a baby crying and you have the mom trying to work. And I remember people who would cross the hallway and look into our office, think we were a daycare. And they were like, what's going on in here? Yeah. No other office would allow that. And granted, we were all socially separated because we all have our own office spaces, but owners need to understand that people are way more than just a paid employee. Yep. That's a mother who has a 1-year-old baby who has no babysitter because of COVID, can't work from home because she's on, our team who needs her business equipment and needs to balance that. Imagine if, Rich wasn't able to see that. What is he going to lay her off, or she's going to work from home and not be able to get her job done? Yeah. No, because she's a mother and she needs to be able to balance the two. If we have a personal situation we need to take care of, Rich doesn't even question us. He's like, go take care of it. If I tell him, you know what, Rich, I need a mental health day because mental health, as you know, when I broadcast it, is so important to me. If I'm feeling down or, having a moment, and I tell him, like, I need to go to Starbucks and work from Starbucks, or like, I just need a day because I'm not physically sick. I don't have an illness. There's nothing going wrong, but mentally I'm not okay. He's going to be like, well, if you're not mentally okay, that means you're not 100% there. You can't perform your work because you're mentally not okay. Go take that mental health day.
Yeah.
And it's important.
Right. Yeah. And I think just going back again, just to the social media side of it, and just like the way that people operate in the roles like you and I have, is just like the people that tell you that there are rules on how to do that particular job, forget it. Like, who made these rules, and when, like, where are they written down, and why can't I just do it the way that I want to do it? Until somebody actually gives me a roadmap on how to do this job, then I'm just going to do it however I figure it out. And then if like I'm the king of throwing stuff against the wall, seeing what sticks. And if it sticks, you do it. If it doesn't, you don't. Like, what's the big deal? I mean, it's just trial and error type stuff. Because what if, this puts me, and it has, so we were talking about before we got on the show or started the episode, like, what if this grows my business? Yeah. Why would I not do it? You know what I mean? So
people ask me, do you get a lot of business from LinkedIn? I would say 80% of my business is from LinkedIn over the past year, 2 years, since I've really been on LinkedIn. And it's so funny because, it used to be cold calling and this and that, and it's not a quick business transaction from LinkedIn. So let me make that clear. It may not be as quick as getting a cold call and knowing that that's a target client. It's more long-term, but with that long-term, relationship building means it's even more of a long-term client.
Yeah.
It may have taken longer to get that person because for you've been doing these podcasts and, you've been rebranding yourself and maybe you didn't get clients right away, but people have also been seeing what you've been doing and then they have someone to go to because remember that Mike guy, or wait, I know this Mike guy, or, and he's a title guy. He's more than just doing podcasts. He has this business and, it creates more long-term relationship building than that quick cold call transaction.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I mean, when I had first started, I had tried the cold call thing with no background in sales or anything. I tried the cold call thing, cold calling attorneys, which was just a disaster. I did like 10 and I was like, this is just not going to work. You know what I mean? I know that makes me seem like I got discouraged quickly, but I'm calling these people. I'm like, oh, I'm Mike from Fidelity. And they're just like, is this about a deal? I'm like, well, kind of, because I want your deals, but not an actual. And they're like, all right, don't call me ever again. Exactly. But next thing you know, I start doing it on LinkedIn and basically like cold calling. I put that in air quotes on LinkedIn. And then next thing you know, just business starts to pick up. I think my first couple of years, I would say I was probably pretty close to that. Probably 75% of my business came from LinkedIn connections. And you're right. It's not a, hey, like, thanks for the message on LinkedIn. Here's $100 million deal. It takes time. But some of my biggest clients now were LinkedIn connections I made in my first year working at Fidelity. And that's just the power of social media, especially in the age demographic that you and I find ourselves in, is people are just used to talking that way, communicating that way, consuming content that way, getting themselves educated that way. And that's just a big thing. So if you're able to kind of master that, next thing you know, you're crushing it.
I also think a negative thing, and maybe you can relate to this with LinkedIn that I find now that, I've really established myself on LinkedIn and I'm still working on it, but I have a pretty good connection base, is people wanting instant gratification from me answering their messages. I remember when I started on LinkedIn and I would message people and it would take them months to get back to me. And I would get so annoyed and think to myself, it's a message. I know you see the message, just answer.
You see the little bubble on the top, like, they read it. Yeah.
It's not that difficult. Until now, I'm in a situation where I get so many messages that I can't keep up with replying because I have my day-to-day job, people. I think people think that all we do all day is make podcasts and go on LinkedIn and don't realize that there's a bunch of other work that's being done behind the scenes, from follow-ups with my current clients, site visits, making sure all of our documents are coming in, following up with architects, engineers, my meetings, reporting to my boss. That quick LinkedIn post that generated 1,000 messages, those 1,000 messages are going to take me like 2 days to get to. And then once you answer those 1,000 messages, there's another 2,000 messages to answer to.
Right.
And you're like, wait, I didn't prepare myself.
You got to stop posting. Yeah.
No. And then my favorite thing is when people in my LinkedIn message ask me, like, what do you do? Or, I've been trying to contact you via LinkedIn and you haven't answered me yet. My business number is posted on my LinkedIn and my email's posted on LinkedIn and my bio's posted on LinkedIn. So those asking what I do, well, you didn't read my bio. Those asking that they've been trying to get in contact with me, well, why didn't you send me an email and just a LinkedIn message? And why didn't you give me a call or leave me a voice message? Although we're using LinkedIn, utilize your resources a little bit, because when I started on LinkedIn, if I wanted to get in contact with a developer, I mean, I knew the background of the developer. I knew what they were doing. I looked on their profile. I sent them a LinkedIn message. I found their email and I found their contact number, and I contacted all three.
Yeah.
Right. And if I find it amazing that people just send a LinkedIn message and then get upset that you don't answer.
Right.
But they don't try to find you.
Yeah, the follow-up is everything, right? So if you're going to send the message, then you have to, and you said, I mean, that's the same thing that I do, similarly with if I'm, going to have lunch with somebody that's new, new for me, at least a new connection. And we're going to have lunch about, talking about future business. So I know everything about them. You know what I mean? I go to their Facebook page, I go to their LinkedIn, I go to their Instagram if they have one, I go to their, company's website, and I just look at all this stuff, and maybe I could find something on there that can make that connection happen, because it's what we were talking about before. It's the know, like, and trust thing, which is one of those things that's just super overplayed, but it's so true that the easier or the quicker you can make that personal connection with someone, the more likely that connection is going to turn into something down the road. And just firing off a LinkedIn message, which I'm guilty of too, and then never following up or never, getting upset that they don't respond or whatever, that just doesn't work. That's not how any of this works.
No. And there's no cutthroat answer for that either. But I do say that one thing with LinkedIn, and I'm still challenged with it, are those follow-ups and answering all my LinkedIn messages, because it becomes like texting. People want to have an entire texting conversation on there. To me, I rather you send me a LinkedIn message, and then with a time and day that you're available and your contact information, like your phone and email, and then let's take it off of LinkedIn. And now let's add you to my everyday life of, okay, now I have your email, because I'm checking my emails every single day.
Right.
So LinkedIn, it could become overwhelming, because the minute I'm on LinkedIn and people see me on LinkedIn, now I'm active. So there you go with those messages. But if you send me an email and you give me a call, I have to get back to you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. All right. So let's move this into the mental health side, because we did touch on it a couple times over the course of those, talking about social media and how that kind of contributes to certain days of bad mental health days, I guess. And good mental health days. If you have some good stuff on social media, I personally have good mental health days after I put out good episodes. So that's something. But let's talk about the mental health. Why is something that's super important to you? Give us some stuff that you do as far as raising awareness, maybe.
Mental health is super important to me. Growing up, I always thought I had really good mental health, and then I had a really bad breakup 2-3 years ago, and I was in a 4-year relationship, and there were a few things that had happened in my personal life outside of my relationship that started to really affect my mental health and caused me to have really bad anxiety. So I had really bad anxiety. I had really bad PTSD. I had a really different upbringing than a lot of most people. And I never recognized it until I became, a young adult. And I started, having a hard time breathing, or I would get anxious, but I didn't believe in mental health. I grew up in a family that was old-fashioned Portuguese. So it was just get over it, have some bread and butter, you'll be fine. Anxiety. Yeah. Anxiety, what's that? And it wasn't until I was going to the doctor, and the doctor had told me, your anxiety is starting to affect your body physically. So the reason you're having a hard time breathing, the reason you're having a hard time focusing is not because you have a heart problem or a breathing problem. It's your anxiety. And I didn't believe it. I was like, anxiety can physically affect my body. And they were like, yeah. And then from that anxiety, it led to them giving me anxiety medication. So I started with therapy. The therapy wasn't working. I was a college student. My life was super hectic. Mind you, I was working 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. And then I was taking 6 to 9 p.m. classes Monday to Friday and doing homework. And I was bartending and serving on weekends. So maybe that contributed to my anxiety.
Maybe. I'm not an expert, but it sounds like that's like a lot of stuff to handle.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But that's the reality nowadays. Is not everyone gets college paid for. Not everyone has those financial means to not do that. And people don't talk about mental health, so they don't recognize. And that was the one thing that I took out of it, which I'll get into it. But, you know, being a college student in itself is not easy. And I think that we don't realize, like, we don't give ourselves a round of applause of, wow, you made it to college, because a lot of people can't handle being in a classroom setting, and let alone being in college where you're double major, double minor, and the workload is intensive and you're working full time. Girl, you need a break.
Right. Take a breath. Yeah.
Yeah. Take a break. Or you're on top of that, you're trying to balance a social life, a relationship life, a family life. I mean, it becomes crazy. And so from there, you know, the doctor said, we need to put you on meds because your anxiety is affecting your physical body. If it was just, you know, mental, then we can work through it with therapy. But now it's affecting you physically. So we're going to put you on anti-anxiety medication and not tell you that that anti-anxiety medication is also depression medication, which on top of that will give you suicidal thoughts and tendencies. And there were all these side effects. And I was on the medication for probably 2 weeks, and then I started having really bad suicidal thoughts. And I remember not having control over my mental state. Like, I could not control these thoughts. I've never had suicidal thoughts before. I was on this medication to try to get better because a doctor told me to take it.
Right.
And it was making me worse. And I had to admit myself to the hospital to get better. And it's such a taboo thing that people don't like to talk about out of fear of being judged. And I say, I really don't care. I don't care if it's going to save a life, because going through what I went through saved my life. And I had to go to the hospital, and I voluntarily went. It's not like anyone told me to. I voluntarily went because I knew that something was happening and I was having some sort of adverse reaction. And as I did research on it, the amount of people who took their lives because of their mental health, I was like, oh no, Satan, like, I am not ready to go. Like, you know, it is too soon.
Right.
I'm like, I have not gone skydiving yet. Not yet. So I went to the hospital, I admitted myself, and it was a long journey of self-healing and recognizing I was actually allergic to that medication. And when I was there, I met a businessman, and, you know, it'd be crazy if one day he saw this podcast, but he was a millionaire and he had his own, you know, business, and he was traveling from Jersey City to Dubai often. And he had just got engaged, and he thought by getting engaged, it would help his love life because he was traveling so much and his business was reaching new heights and doing amazing. And out of nowhere, mind you, no mental health, you know, history, nothing, has a full anxiety breakdown, and his fiance admits him to the hospital because he, like, doesn't want to be alive. Like, It was an entire ordeal. And in that moment, I realized, like, this isn't a mental health issue of, you know, someone has a mental health problem. This is an issue that can happen to you, to me, you know, to, you know, the neighbor next door. You know, I think for years we looked at mental health and looked at someone and said, like, no, they're just crazy. Like, they have issues.
Right.
No, you know, it can happen to anyone, no matter what color you are, no matter what ethnicity you are, your height, your weight, anything. And that's how my mental health journey started, where it happened to me and I thought it could never happen to me. And that was my first problem, thinking that I was too good for something like that to happen to me.
Right.
And as I talk about it, more and more people come forward and start talking about their experience. And another woman I met when I was in the hospital was a teacher, and she retired and felt like she lost her purpose, so she didn't want to live anymore. There was nothing wrong with her.
Yeah.
She lost her purpose. When we talk about our passion and our careers, and then retiring and losing that passion, it could make someone go crazy because they don't know what to do with themselves.
Right. Yeah. It's like one thing defines them, and then you take away that one thing, and then they just totally lose themselves.
Yeah, and it could happen to any of us. So with that being said, after I got out of the hospital, they put me on another medication that went well, and I said, I don't want to do it anymore. This is not a short-term thing that I want to work on. It's a long-term lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's not a year to two, go to therapy, this and that. It's talking about your feelings. It's recognizing good and bad habits. It's being in a comfortable work environment. It's your colleagues, who you surround yourself with, your friends, the way you talk to yourself. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And the mental health journey doesn't stop when you think you figured it out, because now, let's say the next phase of my life, I have children. My mental health's probably going to be all messed up all over again after I have children.
Yeah, I would imagine, right.
Then let's say you get a new job and you're anxious. It's coping mechanism. So mental health's important to me, and the way I advocate for mental health is really in my day-to-day conversations. I strive to have more intimate conversations about mental health in the future. I have some plans for that in the future, and working with women specifically. But I personally, I'm in a women's Bible group, and we talk about mental health a lot. And we're very open with each other about the things we go through. And that for me has been one of the most amazing things, because you realize you're not alone.
Yeah.
And you're not.
Right, exactly. And that, I mean, we've talked about mental health on this show quite a bit. We've had guests on that talk about their struggles and what they've gone through and how they overcame it. I've talked about stuff that I've gone through over the course of my life on this show and other shows that I've been a guest on. And it's just like one of those things that I think, like you said, is taboo in a lot of ways, but the stigma is starting to wear off a little bit, I think, because more people are just talking about who they are, what they do, why they feel the way that they feel. And like you said, I mean, I personally think that anybody, that has you can't have, there's no person in the world that's happy 100% of the time. That person does not exist. And if they tell you that they are, they're full of it. It's just not true. And I think that that's just one of the things. So I had my ways that I kind of came back from it. I know you said that you, not came back from it, because it's like a process, but at least put me on the right track. So were there a couple things maybe that you did, specific things that maybe you did that kind of, maybe started turning the ship around a little bit?
So I took social media breaks for a few years. So for about 2 years, I was off of Instagram. Instagram was really only the social media I had, other than LinkedIn for work. I never really used Facebook or anything like that. I have it, but I don't utilize it unless I'm going on Facebook Marketplace.
Right.
But I love Facebook Marketplace, by the way. That's a whole nother story.
Right.
But working out was really important to me. I find that working out your physical health has a direct reflection in your mental health, because the way you, view yourself has an effect on yourself. So if you're overweight or you're not overweight and you just feel like you're not where you want to be, you have full control over that. And I tell people all the time who are trying to lose weight, or they tell me Nicole, you go to the gym, you look great. What do you need to go to the gym for? Well, that's not for you to decide,
Right, yeah.
Just because you think I look great doesn't mean that I don't think that I can do better, or that I want to have certain personal goals.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not going to the gym to lose weight. Maybe I'm going to build muscle, stamina, endurance, maybe it's for my mental health.
Yeah.
Because when I go to the gym and I take that time for myself, I'm able to set goals and then see myself progress. And that really helps me mentally. Also, meditating. I haven't been so good at it, but meditating has been, taking some time to just be present, because I find that in the industry we're in, we are not as present as we'd like to be. On top of, meditating, prayer, and I know this isn't a religious podcast, but my faith is super important to me. So
yeah.
writing, I try to write down my feelings, emotions, and thoughts on a weekly basis so I can reflect on the things that are affecting me, how they're affecting me, and then how I coped with them. And then surrounding myself. So I filter what I see on social media. I started unfollowing these models, these fitness people. I find that when you're looking at those people, although you may just be looking at them because you like what they're posting, but subconsciously, if you're looking at that all the time. So let's say I have all of these like beautiful models on my page, which I originally had followed because I just thought they were beautiful and I loved the content they posted. And then I really reflected on myself and I said, subconsciously, the back of my mind, when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, I'm thinking about how my body doesn't look like that one model that I saw, or that my hair doesn't look as good, or, that I can't take a picture as good as they did. And, subconsciously, these thoughts come into your mind and people don't like to admit it.
Yeah.
But every time you're looking at things, what you feed your eyes is what your brain sees. And then what your brain sees and hears goes into your spirit, your heart, and your soul. So I believe on my self-growth journey, and it's something that I'm focusing on, is the difference between your flesh, your spirit, and your soul, right? So your flesh is that outside craving and that instant gratification. Your spirit is your spirit. It's going to go when you die, and it's always going to be there. And then there's your soul, which is your heart, right? So if I keep feeding into my flesh, which is going to be desires that might not necessarily be the best desires, right? So going to McDonald's and eating what I know I shouldn't be eating because I was just craving that, and I keep doing that, I'm telling my mind that I don't have self-discipline. And then subconsciously, now my body and my mind and my heart, when I tell someone else I'm a disciplined person, doesn't believe myself and is telling myself I'm a liar. So now my character is being affected because I deep down know I'm a liar, because subconsciously, so it's a whole, effect.
Yeah.
It's an entire chain that people don't like to talk about. And there goes your mental health in the way you view yourself.
Right.
And that's one thing. But I'm talking about it's your daily habits. So for me, filtering what I eat, filtering what I see, and filtering who I surround myself with and what I do. And that's really how, and still, I'm not a expert by any means.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
At all. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but doing those things little by little really help you, take those steps towards self-awareness and trying to improve yourself.
Right. Well, I mean, like you said, you're not an expert, but I don't think that anybody is, but you're as close to an expert as you're going to be on yourself. Like there's nobody else that knows you better than you. So I think that's just one of the things, like, at least for me, like that was just one of the things, just shaking what everybody else was telling me I needed to do, those rules again. And then just being, more like there's I don't know if you watch, this is just so off topic, but Parks and Rec, where like, he's like, I'm Ron, and he says the F word, but Ron effing Swanson, and you're Leslie effing Nope. So I've been telling myself, you started telling myself, you're Mike effing Ham, and like, who else does the stuff that I do? And, to the level that I do it, there's not many people. And once I realized how much I had to actually bring to the table, all of a sudden that ship started to kind of turn itself around. And honestly, doing this show has been one of the things that I've, has really got me closer to like enlightenment, I think, because now I've talked to today. So today's May 6th. So I posted my 69th episode of this iteration of the show today. I've talked to,
so exciting.
I know. Thank you. And I've talked to, I don't know how many people over since May of last year, when I started the original show, different walks of life, different backgrounds, different parts of the world, different parts of the country, different, whatever. And next thing you know, like I have this wealth of experience, and I'm talking to people that I just realized like we're all pretty much the same. Doesn't matter how successful you are or how not successful you are. You're able to connect to people in a real way.
And defines your success, right?
Exactly. Like, right. Yeah.
Who defines, making you a professional in something?
Yeah. Right. Nobody. You do.
No.
So.
Except you.
Exactly. Right. So, all right. Remember when I said before we even started recording this episode that I had to write the time down because I knew we were just going to talk for forever. So we've literally been going for an hour already. But I don't want to leave this part out. So we're going to talk about this, then we're going to do this closing segment, then we'll wrap it up. So you mentioned a couple times over the course of the episode, the mentorship side. So I know you're part of the Aspiring Mentorship Program. Tell me what that is, what got you involved in that, and anything and everything you want to talk about with that.
So, I mean, I was originally working with the Aspiring Mentorship Program because I liked their vision and their purpose. And what they basically do is partner with children in Newark, mainly teens, who need assistance with the direction of their life and education, college application, all of that stuff. If I'm completely quite frank, I haven't been working with them for the past, few months. My business has just been taken off and I haven't been able to, balance that in my life today. I'm really looking and interested in getting involved in mentorship in other areas because I would really like to have my own mentorship program and be able to run it the way that I'd like. So I'm currently working on a really, really exciting project with a partner. Our business is open. We have not launched our business yet, so that'll be a complete separate podcast we can go into. Yeah. But it's surrounded around women's mentorship and only women. Right. So it's going to be really exciting because it's going to be business-based, real estate focused, but also have an investment aspect, also have, one-on-one mentorship aspect. I mean, you name it, we're doing it in that mentorship. And then, I guess when it comes to mentorship, the reason I work so hard right now on building my brand and my business and building, my company's brand and business, which is ultimately my clientele as well, is because long-term philanthropy is really important to me. So I don't believe that you're successful until you've built others' success. You can build your own success, but the world does not revolve around you. I hate to tell you. So whoever's listening to this, if you think it does, it doesn't. And so success to me is when I get to a level where I'm able to help others reach their success, but also give back and leave a footprint. So long term, I would really like to start, opening a different philanthropy area within BuildPro and Captiva where we're really giving back on a complete different level. But that requires time, that requires finances, that requires resources. So I want to do it right. I'm an all-in type of person. I'm either all in or nothing.
Right.
So
yeah,
maybe
the only
that's
way to
toxic.
Live, for sure. Yeah.
Is that toxic?
I don't think so. I mean, if you're gonna do something, you gotta whole ass it. You can't half ass it.
I was gonna say that. Can I say that on
here? Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I mean,
you can't use half of your ass, you have to use the whole thing.
Exactly, right. Yeah, so you got to go all in. But then if you're not going to do it, that's fine. You just don't. Which is
why with the Aspiring Mentorship Program, I was really hyped about it. And I was, advertising it, but I wasn't able to give it my full attention. I can send you the contact information for the founders of that program for them to have a time to speak about that, because I don't feel it'd be appropriate that I speak about that when I haven't been active in it.
Gotcha.
Personally, I'm someone who I think it's respectable to say, you know what, I just haven't had the time to do that, rather than go on a spiel of how I'm involved in something I haven't been involved in.
Right. Well, I knew that you were involved in the mentorship side, and I had seen some stuff about that, so I figured that we would ask it. But then obviously it's, I like the fact that you're doing your own thing, because I think that is just, to me, I mean, you said before, like, the successful part, and when you feel successful, is you help others achieve success. But I also think, going back to the mental health side, I think that if you're able to help, the way that you describe this person that you're trying to mentor, it seems like it looks like a lot like you. You know what I mean? Like women, construction, business, all this other stuff. And I think that that's something, the more you're able to give back to people that, that you have gone through those same trials and tribulations as they're about to go through. I think that personally, I think that helps on the mental health side as well. So I think it's awesome what you're doing, which is why I wanted to at least bring it up and make sure we got it in towards the end of this episode. So
Thanks, Mike.
No problem. All right. So we're going to move the show into our closing segment called Under the Spotlight. So they have the Spotlighters have been listening to us talk, like I said, for over an hour now. I knew that was going to happen. So we're going to put you under the spotlight. So what is one thing you want the Spotlighters to walk away from this episode with?
I would say on the business side, knowing that I'm a resource for no matter what the person is going through on the business side or personal side, that you can always reach out to me, preferably via email or phone.
We've covered that. Definitely. Yeah, right.
And on the construction side, that, I'm always looking to connect with investors, developers, architects, real estate attorneys who are looking to help their clients' projects. And then on the more personal side, never, ever, ever give up on yourself, because you can give up on anything else, but if you give up on yourself, no one else is going to invest in you. And sometimes things short term don't seem like they make sense, but there's always a bigger plan, and to just trust the process.
Love it. All great stuff. And then the Spotlighters, if they need more Nicole Cruz, where can they go to get it?
They can go on my LinkedIn, Nicole Cruz. They can go on my Instagram, BuildWCruz. Build with Cruz, get it? My email, which I'm sure Mike will post, but it's Nicole@BuildProCS.com.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure I put all those links in the show notes. So anybody that does want to reach out to Nicole, make sure you go check those out. I'll also, as always, put my website, themorningspotlight.com, and the email address, themorningspotlight@gmail.com, in the show notes if you want to reach out directly to the show. I can always connect you to Nicole. That would always be good too. So Nicole, thank you for coming on with us today. This has been great, as I totally expected it was going to be.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And everybody else, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.